You're listening to Stimulus Tech Talk, a conversation-based podcast created by Stimulus Technologies that covers a range of topics related to business and technology.
Hello, welcome to Stimulus Tech Talk. I'm Nathan Whittacre, CEO of Stimulus Technologies, and we're very excited to have our guest, Kavita Ganesan, today. She is an AI advisor, strategist, educator, and founder of Opinosis Analytics. Kavita works with teams across the organizations to help them integrate AI strategically and get meaningful outcomes from every initiative. So just a little bit more about Kavita. She has over 15 years of experience and scaled and delivered multiple successful AI initiatives for large companies such as eBay, 3M, GitHub, and McMaster-Carr, as well as smaller organizations. She's also helped leaders and practitioners around the world through her blog posts, coaching sessions, and open source tools. Kavita holds degrees from prestigious computer science programs, specifically a master's degree from the University of Southern California and a PhD from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, with a specialization in NLP, search technologies, and machine learning. Kavita has been featured by numerous media outlets, including Forbes, CEO World, CMS Wire, Verizon, CD Times, Technopedia, and TED Magazine. So welcome, Kavita.
Thank you for having me, Nathan.
You're welcome. So AI has definitely become a big topic in the news recently, and we've had a couple of sessions on AI, and I ran into your book a couple of months ago and was very excited to reach out to you, find out a little bit about how businesses are using AI. So it sounds like you've had a lot of experience working with companies on integrating AI into their businesses and their business models. So tell me a little bit about yourself and kind of your background and what you do, more than the traditional bio.
Sure. So my history with AI goes way back to like 2005. I was actually introduced to AI during my master's program. And that was more on the academic research side of things. So I've done a lot of AI research. And then over the years, I got my PhD, and I was planning to become a research scientist or a professor. But that's the time data science as a field really started to take off. So if you remember 2011 to 2013 is where the big data revolution started to happen. So instead of becoming an academic, I decided to go and solve a bunch of industry problems. So that's where I got exposed to 3M Healthcare. I worked for GitHub, and I solved different types of AI problems, put a lot of models in production, and I learned a lot in those years. And as I was doing that, other companies were approaching me to help them implement AI in their organization because it was a very new concept at that time. So they wanted help on how to integrate AI into their business or come up with AI startups. So I got more and more into consulting roles, and I really liked it. And now I do a mix of consulting, training, and advisory type of work. So I came from the academic side, research, and now I'm like purely AI for business type of person.
So it's interesting. I mean, AI is a very developing field. How is it, working in a field that's constantly changing and evolving, and how does that work in your learning? Because there's no like textbook, you're kind of writing it as you go along, right?
Yeah. So as long as you have the foundational skills, building on that skills is not hard. So the last few years, LLM became a really popular thing. But because I have all this background in AI, in NLP, and I understand how things work, so building on that knowledge was not difficult. It takes me some time to read some papers, reading through blog posts, and just really understanding what it is, how it works, and how I can use it with my clients, and also like going deep and experimenting with things. So the foundation is very critical, whether you're on the technical side or on the non-technical side. So having a breadth of understanding of what AI is would be crucial, I think.
Okay, interesting. So I would imagine, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the community that was working on AI was pretty small. Not a lot of organizations or researchers that were working on it. Has it grown quite a bit, or is it still a small, tight-knit community working on these problems?
So I would say on the research side, it's fairly still a small community. The big tech companies, those universities, and those well-funded AI research labs. But on the industry side, I've seen significant growth on people wanting to somehow use AI for something. So I even had a client who approached me for AI for storytelling. So he wants to integrate it into his courses. So that growth has been quite significant in the last 6 months, I would say.
Interesting. And do you find, as with maybe 10 years ago, the cloud was a big marketing buzzword. Do you find when working with businesses that, AI is kind of a buzzword that people want to attach, and they're really not doing AI, they just want to attach that label on it? Do you find that?
All the time. So that happens more often than I'd like to see. So a lot of people think that they are doing AI, but they're just talking about AI. They're experimenting with things like ChatGPT, but they don't really have I would say, a plan on how they're going to come up with a AI product, how they're going to evaluate it, and how they're going to release it. So the product plan is not there. They just know that they want to use AI to do a demo. I see that all the time, especially with AI startups. They don't have a product design in place. So yeah, I see that as a problem. But clients who do succeed have a plan on where they're going to use AI. So I have a client currently, he knows exactly he needs AI in product recommendation systems. So that's where I'm helping him develop that solution. So his approach is, I have a design, I have this area where I need AI, and I'm going to hire the expert to help me with that. So he's set himself up for success, I feel.
Okay, perfect. So it's an interesting problem where, people, want to jump on the buzz and then they're not, so have some great ideas and tough to implement. So, I mean, ChatGPT obviously is big in the news, but what kind of tools are businesses using? Because I'm sure they're not developing an AI infrastructure from scratch. I mean, what kind of software and tools are companies integrating into their systems?
I would say there's a range of products. Like Amazon has a lot of machine learning tools like AWS Transcribe, um, other tools to understand text data. So companies are using those type of prepackaged tools. And some are developing from scratch because a lot of AI problems don't need ChatGPT. They need simple stats. So all of that still needs to be integrated from scratch, specific to the product needs. And it's not heavy machine learning or anything of that sort, but it's still some form of NLP, some form of intelligence in the product. So it's a mix. And the newer AI startups are the ones who want to use ChatGPT, generative AI in some capacity. And if you see the blog posts or LinkedIn posts that you may see in your feed, that's typically the researchers putting out tools about new generative AI tools or people just curating tools. But I don't think those are actually being used in production systems as widely as you think.
And again, back to ChatGPT, we had a guest on a couple of weeks ago, talking about issues of copyright with, things like ChatGPT. And I'm sure that's a, big question is, copyright, intellectual property issues. And, he mentioned, and I think you mentioned it also, that using a private stack or private, machine learning versus, going to a public database like ChatGPT may circumvent some of those issues with intellectual property and copyright.
Yeah, and a lot of companies don't want to deal with that problem, like uploading their things that are proprietary to them to a third-party service. And cost for startups, cost is also a big problem. So each call that you make to the API costs you money. So just testing and evaluating and then finally integrating and releasing to customers, is the costs are going to really add up. So that's not something they want to tolerate. So if the problem is small enough, they just want to build it themselves.
Oh, perfect. So, I mean, if it's a business leader, not an IT professional like this, but if it's a CEO or CFO that's evaluating a AI project, in the small to mid-sized business range, what kind of things do they need to know about AI? Is it a quick ROI in the investment, or is it a long-term investment? What are some gotchas?
Yeah, so there are two parts to this. One is finding the right AI opportunities, because there may be 100 different opportunities in your company, but some of them may have very marginal benefits from using AI. So finding those high impact ones is critical, because that will show you where your competitive advantage is really going to be. So let's say a lot of your problems are in customer service. So then you can think about how I can make customer service my competitive advantage and maybe enhance all the workflows in that department with different AI solutions that make sense. So that's one area. But for the long term, if you want to be able to repeatedly use AI and deploy AI systems, you have this long-term planning also involved, like thinking about your data infrastructure. A lot of companies collect data, but the data stores are sometimes in silos. Sometimes you cannot access the data, and all of that become problems when you're actually trying to like build models or even fine-tune existing models. You need that data source. Some companies may not be collecting data as aggressively, so they need to think about how to get that in place. So then there's the cultural elements. So a lot of people are fearful of being replaced by AI, and this even happens at the CEO level. So I had a CEO approach me and say, "I'm afraid I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to lose my company because of generative AI." So addressing those types of fear and how AI fits into the picture is important. Like AI is not going to take away your job, but it's going to can augment your workflows and make you a lot more productive. So having these types of conversations is going to be important because it's a mindset shift. And you also need to think about how you upskill your employees. So everybody in the company needs to have a general understanding of AI. Some of the engineers need to get those AI skills because they are the ones who are going to be integrating these solutions. So upskilling existing employees is also a crucial piece. So I would say focusing on all of this is for the long term. But in the short term, you also need to know where the opportunities are so you can plan. You can take these data points and start creating a comprehensive plan.
I would imagine that, AI is, as you mentioned, a productivity enhancer. We've seen in the US that productivity increases have flatlined in the last few years as we've come out of COVID. And that's what I've read. The biggest advantage of AI is increasing productivity of employees, those that embrace it. Can you give us an example, maybe, of a company that's implemented an AI strategy that has seen an increase in productivity or an increase in workforce capability?
Yeah, if you take the credit card companies, for example, if you take their fraud detection department, so they use a lot of AI and they deal with high volumes of transaction. And each transaction needs to be flagged for different occurrences of fraud. And that in itself, just using AI in that workflow significantly reduces the need to hire a lot more employees than they are really using right now. So that is a very good example of how AI can really increase productivity because you don't have to manually verify each and every transaction. An AI system flags a transaction, and maybe a human reviews the transaction. And if it's a high confidence flagging, then they don't even need to do that. It's automatic. So the customers then alerted. So that's one area where I've seen good use of AI. Another is in manufacturing defect detection. So companies like Seagate, they use AI to detect defects in silicon wafers. Now it's very, very tedious to detect defects in silicon wafers because it's so microscopic. But with the use of AI, specifically computer vision, it's able to detect those little defects and highlight where those are. And then instead of doing this in a matter of days, it does it in like an hour or so. So imagine the amount of throughput that they're getting from these AI systems. And also you don't have to stop the production line as often because things are it just keeps going on. You don't have to stop, inspect, and then proceed with the manufacturing process.
Interesting. So if a company wanted to start investing in AI, what kind of team or how do you get started? Because that's the scary part for a business, is where to invest and how to invest in it.
So I think the strategy will look different for small businesses versus larger enterprises. Small business, you'll have to look into where you're doing a lot of manual work, where your processes can be enhanced. So look for opportunities like that and look for tools to augment your workflow. It may or may not be AI, it could be just software automation, but if it helps you, then why not look into using it and evaluate it for a period of time. So look for those inefficiencies. But for larger enterprises, there's a lot more planning involved because the stakes are high. So once you deploy an AI system, it has to create value for the business. Otherwise, you're losing money in the long run. So finding those opportunities is very critical. So you want to look for problems, complex problems that require human-like decision making, and it's also high volume. So you want to find really high volume problems where the use of software automation can produce some sort of tangible benefit, maybe reduction in time to perform a task or reduction in errors. So something tangible and measurable. And also the planning. So this AI type planning is not just, you should not just try to approach it because of AI, but it's needed because at some point you may find an AI opportunity and you may want to start looking into using AI systems. So that planning has to start now, especially on the data side and the cultural side. We have to come to terms with AI is going to be within businesses. So let's get started.
Perfect. So you have a book. Want to talk about your book a little bit?
Sure. Yeah.
So what, why would somebody want to read your book? What, how does it help an executive or a business owner understand AI?
Yeah, so it starts. So my book comes from a place where I'm trying to bridge the gap between the technical world and the non-technical world, the CEOs, the directors who may not have much coding experience. And I've seen that when there's mismatched expectation on the leadership side, AI systems tend to fail, not because the models are failing, it's because the initiative, there's a misunderstanding of what AI systems are supposed to do and what it's actually doing. So I've seen many AI initiatives going sideways because of that. So what my book does, it starts with the basics. It talks about what is AI from a business perspective, provides use cases where you could use AI and why that makes sense for AI. And then it goes into more deeper concepts like, so how do you plan for AI? How do you prepare your organization? What are the 5 preparation pillars? So I talk about that in my book. And I also talk about how do you find these opportunities? So what I spoke about earlier, these complex decision-making problems that are high volume. So I provide a step-by-step framework on how do you find those opportunities, how do you rank, and how do you prioritize. So I wanted to create something that's a repeatable approach so that everyone in the organization can use the same approach and they have a way to collaborate using that approach. And finally, I talk about build or buy considerations, and also how do you measure AI success, and what does that even mean? So does it mean model success? Does it mean just measuring ROI? So getting that clear in an executive's mindset will help them have better expectations of what AI systems are supposed to do for them. So that's what it covers.
Perfect. And how, I just wrote a book. My book's coming out in a couple of months, and tell me about your process. How was it writing the book? It's interesting writing a technical book for non-technical people. I did the same thing. So for you, what was that like?
I would say I spent a lot of time taking the knowledge that was already inside of me and then trying to codify it, and then running through those steps and making sure it works in different cases. So kind of like a test case for programming. So you run it through different test cases. So I spent a lot of time developing those frameworks and making sure that they actually is something that these are things that I do intuitively without thinking. But for somebody else to repeat it, I need to make sure it makes sense. So the draft took me around 6 months, the first draft, but editing was took me about a year to do. Yeah, it was a lot of back and forth and back and forth.
Yeah, I had about the same experience. I thought, I'd have it done in about 3 months, and about a year and a half later, you're ready for publishing. So it's an interesting process, but certainly fun. It challenges you.
It challenges you. It clarifies your thinking. It helps you think about others and how they may be perceiving your message. Yeah.
Well, excellent. And we'll be sure to include a link to your book for those that are listening to the podcast that might be interested in picking up a copy from Amazon or another reseller. So excellent. And if somebody is interested in AI and wanted to get a hold of you, what's the best way to get in touch?
Yes, you can visit my homepage, Kavita-Ganesan.com, or my company website, Opinosis-Analytics.com. So these are the two places where you can get a hold of me. And you'll also have some free chapters to my book on those websites.
So, well, we really appreciate your time, and hopefully, those that are listening are looking for strategies to improve their businesses. And I think AI is a great way to increase productivity, even if it's solving small issues. Like I love your example of, from a customer service aspect, or, analyzing data as they're coming in and be able to, produce those results. So businesses need that today, especially with the, trying to find good employees and increasing, their productivity without having to increase their workforce. So it's definitely a great strategy to move forward with it. So again, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. And we'll make sure we include those links in the podcast so they can find you. Well, thanks, Kavita.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Excellent.